If you've been curious about all the development that is projected to happen here in downtown Redding, today I am with the Mayor, Tenessa Audette, and we are going to be walking through the Riverfront Specific Plan, which has been on the table for a long time. There's a lot of questions, there's a lot of confusion, and I thought it'd be really good to bring you in, help us understand what the history is, what the Riverfront Specific Plan actually is encompassing, and then kind of go through the tension of where our community's at with some changes that are on the table. Maybe give a little bit of an introduction, how long you've been in Redding. You are the mayor, so maybe give us a little bit of a background.
Sure, so I have been on the city council for 2 years. When I came in, this Riverfront Specific Plan had already been voted on. And so it was sort of inherited in this, cycle of politics. So the Riverfront Specific Plan specifically deals with the land from the Posse Ground boat launch all the way down to the Cypress Bridge.
Okay.
So the idea of this really is, what does the city want to happen here? This area by the Civic and the Rodeo grounds is a park. And the community has been very clear. We want it to stay a park. And so that's priority number one. But what do you want that park to look like? Do you want the rodeo grounds there? Do you want the Civic to stay there? Do you want those to be developed? People had originally said, well, are you going to put restaurants down by the river? And the community overwhelmingly said, no, we want these riparian areas to be protected. We want people to interface with the river, not to have commercial businesses down on this end, on the north end of the river. And so a lot of the plan is to talk about, well, what do you want to see, Redding, and where? And so there's a lot of, at this stage of the process, there's a lot of talk about water sports and restaurants and a boardwalk on the south end. And what has been overwhelming on the north end is we want the rodeo, we want the Civic. Do we want that together? Do we want those two separate great facilities? But we really, I think more than anything else, want this area to stay a park, to stay the people's property, and to give us the most access to the river, the most access to play, and the most access to what entertainment we're looking for when we're interacting with each other in the city.
Okay, so for the Riverfront Specific Plan, I know that it's been in the works for a very long time, and we're now kind of at the voice of the community. So it's kind of in the stages of a survey, asking the community to vote on what they would like to see that. Is that kind of...
It's been a year.
Okay.
So for the last year, so it was voted on in 21, or 22, and then it began in 23. And so now we're at the phase where we've had community meetings. There's been several meetings from stakeholders that are here, but we're getting input from the community. What do you want to see? Where do you want to see it?
What's like after that?
After that, they're going to start mocking up some of these plans for the public to see. Is this exactly what you had in mind? And then what ultimately gets created is a flat document that is a zoning. And it will say, this is zoned for restaurant use or some commercial use. It leaves some flexibility in there. And what that means is that if there is a great restaurant that we all love, let's just say Moonstone want to come back, and then there's a spot down by the river, all they would have to do is say, yes, we would like to rent that space because it's already zoned for it, and they can build that. Similarly with the rodeo, this is going to provide them an environmental impact report. This is going to provide them with market research. So if they want to build, rebuild, or add to it, or streamline it, or add different aspects, this will tell them what the market will bear. So it is going to be a very useful document for anybody that actually wants to then do business down here, or if the rodeo wants to rebuild or renovate or whatever it is that they want to do.
Let's just say the specific Riverfront Plan has thumbs up all around with restaurants and different retail and everything. Where does the money come for that? Is that grant or tax dollars? Where does that all come from?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because I think that's the biggest misnomer. The idea is the zoning document's going to say you can put a restaurant there and therefore we're going to get a restaurant. That zoning document already exists. So there already is a Riverfront Specific Plan right now. It's just been in existence for many, many years. And so this is an update to our Riverfront Plan. So we already have a general plan. It generally lays out where we want business, where you want manufacturing, it's zoning.
Yeah.
And so this document is basically going to do the heavy lifting for business in California in 2024, which means we have CEQA, which means we have EIRs, it means we have market research, and this sort of gives Redding the investment it needs on the planning level to say, hey, if you want to do anything awesome here in Redding, especially to our parks and our riverfront, we're going to make it as easy for you as possible. So
it's just inviting investors or people who want to pour into the city, like the green light of Ready, Set, Go.
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier because it's already zoned for that. And so it's just it's just a jump start to any type of development that we want. And if you've lived here, if you've visited here,
lived here my whole life,
right? And if you've driven by and you've come to the Sundial Bridge, you're asking yourself, why isn't there more for us to do along the river? Why isn't there more places to just walk out and be close to the river and look at it and enjoy it? And so this sort of addresses some of that to say, hey, we want that. We're gonna make it as easy as possible. We'll put that planning document out. And if any investors and any businesses wanna come and do something amazing here, this is how you have to do it. And you already have a head start.
Do you have investors knocking on the door saying, if you had all of this approved, if you had this completed, like I would actually start proposing? Or is it kind of like, let's see how this plans out?
I haven't had anybody beating down the door. However,
if you're an investor watching this, come to Redding.
So I wouldn't say that this is gonna make it all happen, but it does give a big head start. And I think more importantly, the impetus to doing it was the fact that the people said there are parts of our city that we don't want touched.
Right.
We do not want a restaurant and housing and development all happening in our parks. We actually want green space. We actually want to keep the river beautiful and clean and uncontaminated and no commercializing it. And so for this north part, I think it's mostly about preserving what we love here, about enhancing what we love here. And on the south end, I think it's more about what could it be?
Yeah.
Could we have the boardwalk? There is something just really special about being close to the water.
Yeah.
It's cooler. It feels good. It's like, it's something bigger than you.
Yeah.
And I think we need that type of interaction. But we also want to protect it. And I do think that the Riverfront Specific Plan protects this northern piece. And for the south side, I think the Kuchis family wants it developed too. I think they do. And I think they're doing all the necessary things that they need to do to make sure that what gets developed there is going to be best for Redding. And there's so much possibility. I mean, we are like top in the world of trout fishing and, fly fishing. And we have an amazing river and we have so much to see, even more to do. And anything that's going to connect us to that, I think is going to be good, not just for the community, but for tourism, for business as a whole.
Yeah. So obviously I would love to say that everybody's excited for change, but not everybody's on board with change. And I know that there's some tension, specifically just the nostalgia that Redding has with the rodeo grounds. I mean, they've been here for 76 years. It's just something that everybody's like excited about. So what would you say is the tension that comes with this sort of proposal and change?
This is the community's area. This is a community park. The rodeo is as much our identity as a community as you're gonna find.
Yeah.
And so I understand the fear. I know that there's past issues that have come up, but hopefully what we can build is a teammate to making a better park here for everybody, for the rodeo, for the Civic, and mostly for the community. I think the community has been very clear that they want the rodeo to be here. I want the rodeo to be here. I can tell you I will never vote for housing to go on any of this area that is a park, that is the city's property. So, there's not much you can do when it comes to fear. The best that you can do is just stay as transparent as possible. Try to communicate and over communicate, and hopefully everybody gets on board with what's going to happen. The rodeo stays here. I think it'll be the most successful if it stays in this location.
And you were saying that if this is voted on as continued use of park, that obviously this protects the rodeo.
Absolutely. And whether that becomes one facility that houses both the rodeo and the Civic, or two separate facilities where you have an outdoor amphitheater and an outdoor rodeo grounds that can have concerts and all the things we love.
What does the future currently hold for the rodeo, specifically as these plans are trying to develop? Like, I know that there's a lot of talk and conversation, probably misunderstanding of what the lease actually holds. Where is the rodeo right now, just on paper?
Currently, their lease goes till 2029. Since the rodeo began, they've had 10-year leases. So we have the very first paper from that city council meeting, the staff report that said that they are going to have a 10-year lease. And so the very first lease that they had was 10 years, and you can go through the years, and every 10 years they got another 10 years and another 10 years. So the current lease that they're on was signed in 2016.
Okay.
It gave them till 2026. When this thing unfolded, they got obviously nervous that 2026 wasn't going to take them past the Riverfront Specific Plan, and they wanted to be in a good position to leverage staying here.
Right.
And so they asked us to give them as much as we could, and by current laws, which are very complicated and frustrating for everybody, but that happened in 2021. It meant we can give them 5-year increments as long as they weren't going to do any construction. And so we gave them that last year. We voted to extend it to 2029. And what we're talking about now is that HCD is the Housing Community Development is changing some of its regulations that could possibly open the door to a long-term lease, and long-term just means 10 years. And so maybe with 10 more year options, which is what they've had this whole entire time. So that's really what we're looking at. We're going to find out from HCD, is it possible to extend this for 10 years and allow them to do construction? Because that's really what they're hoping for. They're hoping that that long-term lease will allow them to get loans or grants and to build the rodeo center that they want to build.
And would you see like ever it being rejected? Because it sounds like obviously plans and development to get to that additional long-term lease, is there really any like negative points that you could see like it not coming to like fruition?
I think the only reason that it could possibly not is because of construction.
Got it.
So there are surplus land rules that are very complicated. Basically, it has nothing to do with really Redding. It has a lot to do with the rest of California. And as we all know, Sacramento passes one size fits all. And then everybody has to get a carve out and an amendment and just to try to survive in this environment. And so really they have been victims of a very unintended law that basically says any lease or sale, so a lease or a sale over 5 years cannot have any type of construction and demolition on it. So really what we're going to do now is we're just going to sit down in this ad hoc committee and say, okay, HCD, would you give us 10 years and allow them to do construction, and see what type of advice that they give back.
So now the Redding Rodeo is literally right over there, and then dividing it is basically the Civic Center, which is part of the Riverfront Specific Plan. And this has been, if you're not here in Redding, this is basically our biggest convention center where concerts, shows, theater, stuff happens. Besides this Cascade Theater, obviously that's a little bit, another option for our community. What has been kind of the thoughts around the Civic Center?
So the Civic Center has been in existence a long time as well. And in 2011, Advanced Redding took over because it was a failing business. And so they have poured a ton of money into it as a nonprofit. They're here to just serve the city and to make this place profitable. And so that's what they've been doing since 2011. So what does that mean for the specific plan? It means really upgrading. So either the city invests some money because it's a city-owned property to fix it, to get it ADA compliant, to really bring it into the 21st century, or we look for another option. As amazing as it is, we're in a different era and we have different needs as a community, wanting a wrestling tournament or basketball tournaments. I think the community could benefit from a larger, more well thought out, planned civic center. So the city doesn't have the money to invest in that, but if we had outside investors that wanted to do that, that would be a great option for the civic center.
Is there like a lot of opposition for people wanting to keep the Civic? I mean, the Redding Rodeo is a huge like contender right now, keeping that, preserving it, don't really try to change it too much for what it is to each side. But is the Civic really much of an opposition for a lot of people?
There isn't an opposition to redoing the Civic.
Yeah.
I think the issue with the rodeo is they think they're going to take it away. I think the rodeo would love to renovate. I think that's what they want. They want a long-term lease to renovate. They want it to be amazing and everything that they had envisioned. I mean, it is a world-class rodeo. And so I don't think anybody is in opposition of upgrading what we have and making it better. I just don't think that the public really understood what was really being offered, What are the options? Are you going to take something away? Are you going to fix something? Are you going to replace something? And what would that be? And so the Riverfront Specific Plan is the hope is that the public will get involved and say, here's what we would want. We would want 2 facilities. We would want 1 facility. We want no facilities. No one has said that. But I think that there's been less opposition for the Civic because Advanced Redding understands this either needs a huge investment to get it up to par, or it's going to need some investor to come in and build a new one.
Yeah. And one last thing, since we've been hanging most on this side with the Rodeo, the Civic, and kind of like the Riverfront Specific Plan, is it just like kind of like there's 2 options on the table, we take a majority of the vote? Is that kind of like how it's going to land in the coming year-ish?
Yeah. So also not very exciting. None of that will happen because really what it is this is the conversation that should have happened at the beginning. So you can talk about it, sort of put those ideas out there, but it will be zoned as a park for public use.
Right.
That is really at the end of the day what you're going to get. The city just sets the table.
Yeah.
And says, this is a park.
Invite people in.
You can build a Civic Center here. You can build a rodeo here. This is what it's zoned for. We are hoping that it is public use. For 20 years, because these plans are only for 20 years. And then they're renewed and new vision comes. We start this over. But the fact is it's just zoning. So there's going to be no plan. There's going to be likely no offers. There's going to be what exists now and the opportunity if anybody wants to fix the Civic or replace the Civic, fix the Rodeo, or if the Rodeo wants to invest in and is able to get investment to build up what they want.
So now we have moved over to the south side of the Riverfront Specific Plan, and this is the privately owned land by Kutris. And I know that not much can really change, more so whatever is proposed to him from investors to people that want to build, develop, and create something is really in his hands. So what has really been kind of the vision for this? And it sounds like he's pretty open-minded if the terms make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Now this makes it very different on this side, right? So there's less input from the public that is mandatory. Yeah. But he's certainly invited all of the input from the community because that's great for market research. That's great for an investor saying, wow, the community is really coming out strong that they want to see a restaurant down there. So we will know that it would probably be successful if that was able to be there. So while we have a great amount of influence, we don't have any control over what happens down here. And that's fine. We'll take the influence. We want to influence this area being developed, another place where we can come down and interact with the water, maybe bring friends and family from out of town to walk along the boardwalk and, a place to bike and just have fun.
Yeah. Do you know if anybody's proposed anything to him? Is there anything really in the works?
I feel like there's many things in the works, and I do think that there are offers coming. I think probably this is about the best time that we've had where there's offers and there's an opportunity. And so, just be, putting in your information on the research pages for this, be putting in your input, saying what you'll come to, what you want it to be a part of, because it definitely will have an influence on what comes down here.
Yeah. Well, I think this has been super helpful for people thinking about moving to Redding, knowing where the growth, where the development is. A lot of people see the Sacramento River and wonder, what does our area have to offer? And it's been a hometown of mine my entire life. So it's been cool to see the development. And I know that there's tension and change is always scary and fearful, but hopeful that, the voice that the community has during the specific plan, just to kind of say, hey, this is what we would envision, creates a further conversation to get the investors to get the ball moving forward if that, does come. Is there anything else you would want to add for people that are coming to our area or people that are in our area right now in regards to this project or kind of the development around?
Yeah, I think that we actually have things that have happened in the past that maybe we were opposed to, we were concerned about. The Sundial Bridge, the Sheraton, those are probably a more recent history where there was the same amount of fear and concern that it's not gonna look like Redding, that it's not going to attract what we wanna attract here. But I would say that Redding is primed for positive, intentional and specific growth.
And now, the Sundial is a landmark.
It is something that actually brings people here. And so sometimes it's important to be part of the conversation as opposed to just being opposed to something. And I feel like the Riverfront Specific Plan is that invitation, hey, just be part of the conversation. say your opposition or say the concerns that you have, and let's do our best to have those in mind when we're designing and dreaming of these concepts, because eventually somebody will want to do something.
Right.
And your dreams and your design and your input will come in handy at that point, and you will have had this huge opportunity to influence. I think that the community should take it.
Yeah. Well, I've personally learned so much from this, just, being here and reading headlines and news, and it's a lot to digest. And I know that you've been a wealth of knowledge and just understanding just kind of the big overview picture. So thank you so much for your time. As always, this is Rooted in Redding. So if you are thinking about moving here to Redding or you currently live here, we'd love to help you find a place here and also a community so that you can thrive here in a great lifestyle that we call home. We'll catch you next week.